What makes a book ideal for autumn? I thought about it and I realized that an ideal autumn book needs to be cozy and wraps around you like a warm blanket on a cold evenings. Um, so today I would like to introduce 5 of the best autumn books for you to read. So without further ado, let's start with the first one. So that is the One Fly Over the Cuckoo Nest. This is a little bit of a weird book because the first time I read it, I absolutely hated it. I can't explain why I hated it. I just did not like the plot line. I did not like the characters at all. But a couple of years later, I reread that book and it became one of my favorite books. So it's really, really weird. The second time I read it, I absolutely loved it. So I am planning to read it for the third time. I just don't know what will come out. So the storyline follows this big guy. He's massive, well over 6 foot and very wide. And he ended up in a mental hospital where he find that the hospital is run by a tyrannical nurse and all the other nurses are very sort of tyrannical little minions of tyrannies, and all the patients were absolutely terrified of this massive nurse and of her army as well. So this big guy, he came in, he's wild, right? This guy is absolutely wild and he just wants to change. He does not listen to the nurse. He challenges her authority to some really dire consequences. But because of his resistance and his impotence, his size, mere size, the sheer size of him, he actually takes lots of the patients with him on this journey of rebellion. It's very funny, but at the same time quite tragic as well. So one of the very best book, I think, that you really should give it a try. The second book is We Have Always Lived in a Castle by Mary Shirley. Now, if you know Mary Shirley, she's one of really, really talented writer. Her short story, Lottery, gained notoriety because of the very sort of puzzling ending and also violent ending to that little short story. But also her most famous work is The Haunting of the Hill House. So this time we're talking about We Have Always Lived in the Castle. Now this is the book I absolutely love. I read it twice. It's about this family, very rich family that pretty much all died off, and like typical Mary Shelley fashion, we don't really know what happened. We got the sense that her family has been poisoned, killed by one of the members, and this member is left with her sister. So 2 sisters now live in this massive house, a castle-like house, and they were under siege from the villagers. So this house sits pretty isolated on a estate, and surrounding this estate are just normal, it's not even middle class, peasant class sort of houses. And one thing leads to another. Those peasants always hate the occupants of the castle because, they occupied an entirely different world and they hated their wealthiness, they hated their, different world view. So one thing leads to another. It resulted in this siege of the castle with the peasants coming down to this castle with a burning torch and pitchforks and stuff like that. Fantastic read. As I said, the second time I read it, I loved it. I love that mentality of being sort of locked in by the castle, self-sufficient, and yet they know that the danger is lurking just around the corner. Very, very cozy read, so highly recommend it for autumn. Okay, so the third book is Ken Follow's The Pillars of the Earth. I read this book many years ago, and I remember absolutely loving this book. It is about a cathedral building. Although it sounds quite boring, building a cathedral, right? But there's so many intrigues, so many connivings, machinations going on. It's like, the novel The Prince? This is the fictionalized, dramatized Prince in action. It is thick, it's more than 1,000 pages. All these monks and priests, they're all sort of stabbing each other in the back and trying to climb higher in the hierarchy to be the abode of this cathedral. It is absolutely fascinating. The writer said that he made so much research in order to actually write this book the real history behind the building of the cathedral, but also different names, terminologies of the cathedral itself. Trust me, it sounds boring, but it's not. It is absolutely phenomenal novel. There are so many. It's like, okay, quick example. This is like George R. R. Martin's A Game of Thrones, but sanitized version, right? Less nakedness, but lots and lots of stabbings, just like Game of Thrones. Do read this one. It is comfy reading at its best. I love it. Okay, so the fourth book is also one of my favorite, if not my favorite, of all time, and that's The Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. It sets in a scene pretty much like this house where I'm actually standing in. The scene is very similar to the house that just behind me, and it's perhaps the best surprise you book ever. There's a scene about 50 pages in that is the biggest surprise I have ever read in any work of literature. Highly, highly recommended. It has something to do with time loop, and it's inspired by Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. So if you think about Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None and threw time loops into it, that's The Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. If you haven't read it already, please read it. It is my second favorite book ever, second only to Stephen King's Stand. Amazing, amazing book. It's a perfect book to read in a rainy night because the house behind me is the scene of the story. Lots of intrigues, lots of intrigue. I absolutely love it. Read it, please. So, okay, so the last, but certainly not the least, is the series of books. There are 14 in total by the author of Jodi Taylor. She is a British author. Her first book is called One Damn Thing After Another, and it's fantastic concept. It's about those group of historians together with securities and engineers. They have built a pod which will allow them to travel into the history, into the past. And if you want to laugh, read those books because it will just make you laugh out loud. Those historians and the security that are designed to protect them are basically disaster magnets. So whichever period that they went to back in the past, they always managed to get themselves in trouble. And the trouble with the local people at that time in history was just hilarious all the time. So I'll give you a quick example of the past that they went back to. The biggest one is the Trojan War. So they were infantry. They managed to get back to the Trojan War period and infiltrate into the Greek army and also infiltrate into the Turkish army to see from two perspectives of the attacking forces. Every storyline was told in such a hilarious way. The characters are amazing. The competitions between the engineers and the security team, whenever they play football, that fierceness came out, and football became rugby match every single time. All the characters are just so funny and so human. As I said, there are 14 of the books in total. I highly, highly recommend them if you want to have a good laugh. I discovered them when in the first lockdown, and without stopping, I read pretty much all the way through, and every single one of them are so funny. So do read them, please. Okay, guys, that's the conclusion for today's video of all those 5 books. All of them are fantastic. My favorite one is The Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, but the rest of them are all absolutely amazing. So do give any of them a try. You won't regret it. I just think, autumn, cold, rainy, in the evening, turn on a radio with some, I don't know, jazz music, classical music, a cup of red wine or coffee, a tea, and just relax, sit down, relax, drinking your coffee or tea, and just read those books. Absolutely amazing. Anyway, guys, that's the end of this video. Please give a thumb up and subscribe. And until next time, cheerio.